Good afternoon, Robertson Wesley. My name is Shiloh. My pronouns are he and him. We have Jack and Jackson in the background today. Welcome to those who are tuning in. Today we're going to be talking a little bit about smudging, as well as the two-spirit identities that we've been seeing and learning about for the last little while. So before I continue on, I'm going to start up a smudge. So if any of you are familiar with smudging and have the tools to smudge, please go grab those and join with me. If you do not have those things, that's okay. You can take a minute of silence while I smudge, or you can learn a little bit of how to do it, and you can go and eventually get your own, and you can try doing it yourself as well. So what is smudging? So smudging is a tradition common to many First Nations and Métis folks. It involves burning one or more medicines gathered from the earth. Our 4 sacred medicines, if any of you remembered from my Indigenous Peoples Day sermon, that there are 4 medicines. It's the tobacco, sage, cedar, and sweetgrass. The most common of the medicines used for smudging is usually sweetgrass, sage, and cedar. Sweetgrass and sage being the 2 most common. Smudging has been passed down from generation to generation. I know my mother taught me how to smudge. And there are many ways and variations on how to smudge. There's no one clear way to do it. Everyone has their own different ways of smudging. Historically, Métis and Inuit people did not smudge. However, today many Métis, like myself, and Inuit people have incorporated smudging into their lives, just because it's a really popular way to cleanse and heal, and kind of let ourselves be with the earth. Smudging allows people to stop, slow down, become mindful and centered. This allows people to remember, connect, and be grounded in the event, task, or purpose at hand. Smudging also allows people to let go of a lot of negativities. Similar to the dream catcher, the negative dreams get pulled in and good dreams are dropped down through the feathers. Same thing with smudging. We smudge ourselves with the smoke to let go of the negativities. Letting go of things that inhabit a person from being balanced or focused comes from the feeling of being calm and safe while smudging. The forms of smudging will vary from nation to nation, but are considered all to be a way of cleansing oneself. So it's a way of cleansing, being mindful and centered. Smudging is a part of the way things are done and is part of living a good life. And so a lot of times Indigenous folks will start any meeting, workshops, education, events with a smudge just to ground ourselves together as a community. Smudging is also voluntary, so people are not forced to smudge or pressured to smudge. You can always pass. So if you're ever in a situation where smudging is happening and you don't feel comfortable enough doing it, please feel free to pass. That's totally okay. So today, I'll show you a little bit of what I have here. I have my smudging shell here, full with some tobacco and some sage. And I also have my handy-dandy braid of sweetgrass. So this is brand new. My mother got it for me for my birthday this past summer. So it's nice, decent braid here. We're going to be burning this one today. One of the I guess regulations on smudging is you're not supposed to have any metals on you. So try to take off as much jewelry as you can. So I'm going to take my watch off. Unfortunately, I can't take my nose ring out, but that's okay. The Creator will forgive me for that. I'm also going to take my glasses off. And my earrings are silicone, so I can keep those in. And I don't have any necklaces on. The other thing with smudging is you have to make sure that you smudge with an element, so usually matches are a good way to go. Usually lighters and stuff are frowned upon when smudging. And I also have my smudging feather here that I use to kind of keep the smoke going. So when we smudge, for those that don't know and want to practice, we smudge originally to clear the air. And so we let the smoke rise and clear the air around us. As the shell gets closer to us, that's when we start bringing the smoke towards our bodies. The first thing that we do is that we want to have good thoughts. So we bring the smoke above our heads, over our brains, to have good thoughts. The next is that we want to see the good in people, and so we'll bring the smoke to our eyes. Next, what we'll do is we want to have listening ears and listen to positive things, and so the next step is bringing the smoke to our ears. We also want to speak really well of people and speak good to people, and so we'll bring the smoke to our mouths for that as well. And last, we want to smudge our whole body, and we want to be good for ourselves, we want to have good actions, and so we'll bring the smoke towards our body. This way is kind of a fun way to do it, whichever way you like. I usually go to each arm, and then I go down to my body, and that's how I do it for me. So let's do this. For those that don't have any smudging tools, please take this time to pray or have a moment of silence. Just light this here, just lighting it up. Oh, I'll show the camera, there you go. So let it catch a little bit, get the smoke going. There, you can probably see the smoke on the camera now. Alright, and here we'll start our smudge. Thank you for joining me for this. If you do smudge, you can let it kind of burn out. The smell is amazing. If any of you have smelled sweetgrass burning, it is such an amazing smell. I love it so much. It's very calming and relaxing. Now that we're finished with our smudge, we're going to move on to our live stream topic for the day, which is two-spirit identities. So many of you might not know what two-spirit is. So today the term two-spirited or two-spirit generally means two things. The first one being an umbrella term to refer to all LGBTQ folks who identify or are First Nations, Métis, Inuit, Indigenous of any kind. And the other way of describing two-spirit is it's used to describe a person who encompasses both the male and female spirits within them. The term two-spirit can also be used abstractly to indicate the presence of two contrasting human spirits, so such as, being a warrior and a clan mother. It can also indicate two contrasting animal spirits, which depends on the culture and the tribes, but the most common would be an eagle and coyote. And a long time ago, there used to be a lot more words to describe the differing gender identities and sexualities. In Cree, for example, there are 6 different words for gender, but we lost all of this knowledge after the first contact because of colonization. I'm going to throw in the comments a photo when I get a chance, and it has all of the terms in Cree and different languages that mean two-spirit, or their understanding of what two-spirited means. As I continue on, I want to thank a good friend of mine, Gabe Castillo. They work with the Isthmus Center as well as working with Edmonton Two-Spirit Society. They also work for Altview. They are a two-spirited person here in Edmonton. They are an educator and knowledge keeper. They have taught me so much about two-spirit identities as well as just any Indigenous identities as well. If you have any questions, I can post here Gabe's email. Gabe is always okay with answering any questions that you may have. So if you do have any other questions in the future, please feel free to reach out to Gabe. So why do we call it two-spirit? So originally, before, two-spirited folks used to be called Berdache. So the term originally adopted by European colonizers. This referred to Aboriginal individuals who did not seem to fit the conventional European definitions of gender and sex roles. So the term persists in the literature to refer to Indigenous peoples who are lesbian, gay, bisexual, and trans. But it's considered a negative and derogatory term within the community, and so it's now been replaced by the term Two-Spirit. So a little bit of brief history with the term Two-Spirit. In 1991, there was an annual general meeting for gays and lesbians of the First Nations. That term obviously is a little outdated and a little exclusionary, but back then, that was 30 years ago. That took place in Winnipeg, Manitoba. The attendees decided to replace the European terms of lesbian, gay, or bradach with the term Two-Spirit. Since then, the community has sought to honor the sacred and unique roles that Two-Spirit people held before colonization and reclaim their place in society. So a little bit more history on Two-Spirited people. Before colonization, Two-Spirited people were valued and respected members of their communities. They were believed to house the female and male spirit within them, hence the term Two-Spirit. There's two spirits within them. And they played very important roles in their communities. They were often teachers, they were healers, caregivers, medicine peoples, hunters, and warriors. They did a lot of things. Unfortunately, colonial contact brought with it its very homophobic beliefs that quickly threatened and suppressed Two-Spirited roles and their teachings. Upon their arrival, it would not have been uncommon for colonization to see, men dressed in women's clothes carrying out female roles, and women dressed in male clothes carrying out male roles. Nonetheless, these colonizers concluded that these roles were abnormal and sinful, and they did not fit the conventional roles that the colonizers expected of men and women. So oftentimes, Two-Spirited people were the first to be targeted and killed by European colonizers and explorers. Sometimes, oh, we have Gabe here. Gabe, oof, I forgot what day it was after writing in my calendar. Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, welcome, Pen. And yes, Gabe is amazing. In attempts to protect Two-Spirited folks, often many Indigenous communities would hide their Indigenous members to stop them from being killed. Also, they would often stop the teachings from being passed down. And over time, many of the communities forgot the roles and importance of Two-Spirited people, not only within their own communities, but forcibly forgotten by residential schools. As a result, some of the Two-Spirited folks and individuals find themselves shut out of the community gatherings, often disowned or ostracized by their communities. But regardless, we do see that many Indigenous folks now are trying to integrate themselves back into the community, starting to teach and learn and share their identities and the teachings that revolve around being Two-Spirited. For many of you that may be asking, I do identify as Métis. That is my heritage, but due to my own understandings of Two-Spirited and how those roles play out in those communities, I feel as if I do not identify as Two-Spirited. So although I am trans and Métis, that does not mean that I identify as Two-Spirited, but many people do. And so Two-Spirited is sometimes a self-proclaimed identity, but sometimes it is a role placed on folks. And it doesn't mean that you have to be LGBTQ to be Two-Spirited. A lot of times other folks who are embodying both spirits sometimes do not identify within the queer community, and so they are still considered Two-Spirited. Pan says, also reading some great queer articles that dissect the patriarchal heteronormative falsehoods perpetuated by interpretations of the Bible, among other things. That sounds amazing. Yeah, there's a lot of kind of the falsehoods that have been shared among us, but also just the erasing of history and the erasing of a lot of the stories that should have been continued on that we've lost. And we see that a lot with the Two-Spirited communities, with a lot of their teachings being lost because of that. So with being Two-Spirited, especially now in our contemporary life, there's a lot of feelings of being unsafe. So this is very common for Two-Spirited students and youth while attending schools or being within their Indigenous communities. There's a lot of reasons why students or folks feel unsafe Many of them feel unsafe in things such as change rooms, washrooms, classrooms, schoolyards, anything like that. Two-spirited folks often experience homophobia, bullying, verbal harassment, physical altercations, exclusion, rejection, discrimination due to their race and physical appearance, and as well as destruction of personal property. And it's not always easy for two-spirited folks to be able to reach out for help. A lot of folks state that many of them don't know of any workplace or school policies for reporting homophobic incidents, as well as they don't feel like staff, students, or school staff, teachers, employers would intervene or say anything to address situations such as these. And many two-spirited folks are more likely to experience depression, anxiety, attempted suicide, running away or getting kicked out of their houses, dropping out of school, and abusing drugs and alcohol in lieu of their heterosexual and cisgendered classmates or coworkers. So when thinking about these differences, a lot of people agree that just because you're two-spirited doesn't mean that you automatically have mental illness per se, but a lot of the stress such as racism, coming out, fear, family rejection, family disapproval, victimization, and chronic stress usually have the ability to cause mental illness within the two-spirited community, especially with two-spirited youth. Some of the contemporary issues that we see in regards to two-spirit identities is the increasing visibility of the two-spirit concept in mainstream culture. We have seen it being very empowering. I know I've seen a bunch of TikToks around two-spirit identities. I know a bunch of the lovely folks here in Edmonton that are doing a lot of the two-spirited work. They're very empowering, but there is a lot of undesired consequences with this, with two-spirited becoming more visual, is that we see a spread of misinformation about the cultures of Indigenous people. We see a term called pan-Indianism, where we kind of take all of the different tribes and merge them into one identity. And we also see cultural appropriation of Indigenous identities and ceremonies among non-Indigenous people, especially with two-spirited folks. The two-spirit identity is specific to Indigenous cultural identity. It is not a term that non-Indigenous people can take upon themselves. So in order to identify and do the roles of a two-spirited person, the person must be Indigenous. Furthermore, for Indigenous folks whose lives have been impacted by the residential schools and other Indigenous communities, there's severe cultural damage that has been done by colonization. Specifically, two-spirited traditions in their communities may have been more severely damaged or even lost. In many of these cases, it's been really a big challenge for folks to remember and revive some of their older traditional ways and to overcome the homophobia and other learned prejudices of forced assimilation that they felt. For those that don't know, a reminder that the last Indian residential school, which was located in Saskatchewan, actually closed in 1996, which is not that long ago. That was actually a year before I was born. But it's so far, or it's so close in our history that my mother could have been in a residential school. Many of you could have been in a residential school. And so this isn't far history. This isn't something that has been done many, many millennia ago. This is something that is within the realm that people living here today experience these types of schools. When Indigenous people from communities are part of communities that are less accepting of two-spirited folks, many two-spirited folks joined the LGBTQ communities that weren't Indigenous, but there was a tendency for those folks to become tokenized or appropriated, and this caused a lot more rifts than unity. And so a lot of the two-spirited folks have created their own societies and their own communities for Indigenous LGBTQ and two-spirited folks. The reason why they don't feel included often in the non-Indigenous LGBTQ communities is because they have to navigate between the racism within the LGBTQ community as well as the homophobia and transphobia that they find in their own Indigenous communities. So they're often in this in-between space. They often have to do a lot of emotional labor to educate their coworkers, friends, classmates, employers, us even. There's a lot of emotional labor that goes into that without any compensation money-wise or material-wise for their time. They're often, again, like I said, being the token native or the token LGBTQ person within both of their communities. And they've also have to conform to a lot of Western society's expectations when two-spirit Indigenous roles are outside of that system entirely. And unfortunately, there are a lot of higher rates of suicide, addiction, poverty, murder, etc., especially with our missing and murdered Indigenous women. So to end off, not on a sad note, but there are many Indigenous folks here. So many of you might know Dr. James Makokis. Dr. Makokis, I guess, is here in Edmonton. Dr. Makokis does a lot of two-spirited and LGBTQ transgender dysphoria education as a doctor. Makokis actually won the Canadian, what's it, that show called? Canada's Race? Oh no. Someone will know what I'm talking about. There's the race that people do for that TV show. Makokis and I'm pretty sure his husband both won. And so there's been a huge influx of folks around here. There's also the Edmonton Two-Spirit Society here in Edmonton that does amazing workshops, amazing education, events, and just they do a bunch of stuff. So give them a follow as well. I'm going to put both links in the comments below. There's the Edmonton Two-Spirit Society website as well as their Facebook page. So feel free to give them a like and follow them for any of the events that they're doing. As well, let's end off on some of the things that you, as potentially an Indigenous person, or as an ally, or as a settler, these are some things that we can do. And Amazing Race Canada, thank you. That's the name of that show. Yes, James Makokis. That was the one. So James is the winner of Amazing Race Canada as a two-spirited individual, and is also here as a practicing doctor in Edmonton and helps some of the Edmonton Indigenous youth get access to hormones and surgeries. So James is an amazing person, and there's many others here in Edmonton that do such amazing work, similar to Gabe, and many others within the Two-Spirited Society that do a lot of this education and a lot of this work. And none of this information that I have shared today has been my own. A lot of it has been from James, from Gabe, and from other resources that have been shared with me from the Two-Spirited Society. So all of the information is definitely from them and all of the work that they've done. So what can you do as an ally, as a settler, as an Indigenous person who might not be two-spirited? The main one is donate space, time, money, and experience. If you're able to host things, if you're able to provide volunteer time, if you have the extra money to help out with any of their events, if you have experience within the type of events or the type of communities, please do so. They also ask to have, equality and respect for hiring, for pronouns, for intake forms. They also ask to, bring in elders and two-spirited people and knowledge keepers into our spaces and having them lead us in workshops, lead us in meetings, and having their knowledge and their ability to continue on with our meetings. They also ask for policies and procedures to empower two-spirited folks, to have two-spirited folks at the front end. Also to allow for and support research for two-spirited, led and directed by two-spirited folks, and having more research within the Indigenous community and within the two-spirited community. And also just to decolonize a lot of the structures that we're familiar with, decolonize our hierarchies, and having more consensus decision-making instead of a hierarchical decision-making structure. So there's many things that you can do. Feel free to take a look at their website and their Facebook page, get involved, learn more. And hopefully within some of the events that I do, I can definitely bring a lot of two-spirited folks in, and we can do a lot more teachings that way. But stay tuned for a lot of those things, and thank you for joining me in the talking of two-spirited. Please go see all of their stuff, as they're the ones with all the information. If you're just joining and watching from the beginning, um, please join me in that smudge that I did. If any of you would like anything or any resources on how to smudge and where to get the stuff to smudge, please reach out. I can definitely help you out that way. I have tons of sage I can give you, but I can also tell you kind of where to go and how to get it. There are some elder protocols in place in order to get it. You can buy it, but that is frowned upon. Usually it's best to, get sweetgrass or sage from an elder and bringing them some sort of tobacco offering and things like that. So if you're interested in any of that, please reach out to me. I can give you all the resources and how to get the stuff to smudge. And I can also give you a document on the order of smudging that I do, that I was taught by my family. But yeah, so reach out if you'd like to. Join me Thursday for the Affirming coffee hour. That's at 11 a.m. till noon. That's still on Zoom for the most part. So if you need the Zoom link, please send me a message or an email and I can get that to you. And if you're too busy to join me on the Thursday, I will see you next Monday. And please take a look at the live stream schedule for Robertson Wesley. There's many things happening throughout the week that you can join. I'm not the only one, so go take a look at who is doing what this week, and I will see you all next Monday. Take care. Bye, everyone.